Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Devotions on the Porch. I'm Samuel, and today we're going to explore one of the most beautiful invitations Jesus gives us: rest. Life can get pretty overwhelming sometimes. We're always trying to live up to expectations, both from the world around us and the ones we put on ourselves. But in the middle of all this striving, Jesus has something different to say. He tells us to come to Him, especially when we're weary, and He promises to give us rest. In today's episode, we're going to dive into what that rest really means, how it's tied to the Sabbath rest of God, and why it's not based on anything we do, but entirely on what Jesus has already done. Let's start with the words of Jesus in Matthew 11, verse 28 to 30. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavily burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Isn't that comforting? But what does it mean to take His yoke? And why is His yoke easy and His burden light compared to what we're already carrying? Back in Jesus' time, the Pharisees were burdened by the law. They saw themselves as yoked to a system of religious rules that demanded perfection but never gave peace. Jesus, on the other hand, offers something different. He offers to yoke us to Himself. Imagine how a young ox would be yoked to an older, stronger ox, where the stronger one carries the majority of the load. Jesus is saying, "Let me carry it. Just walk alongside me." Now, He's not offering a life without responsibility or challenges, but He's offering us a way to carry those burdens without being overwhelmed by them. This idea of rest goes all the way back to creation. After God created the world, He rested on the seventh day. That rest wasn't because God was tired. He's God. But it was His declaration that everything He made was good. It was complete. But think about what happened after that, the temptation in the garden. The enemy told Adam and Eve that they weren't enough, that they needed more. This temptation came right after God had declared His creation very good. We still face that same temptation today, don't we? We're told we're not good enough. We need to do more, be more, achieve more. But Hebrews 4:9-11 reminds us that there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. This rest isn't just about a day, it's about entering into the finished work of God. Just like He rested from His creation work, we're called to rest from our striving to prove ourselves. When we try to earn our righteousness or maintain it through our own efforts, it's like we're working on the Sabbath. But the good news is, Jesus has already done everything necessary for us to be made right with God. He offers us rest for our souls because the work is finished. Hebrews 10:11-14 tells us that while the old priests could never sit down because their work was never done, Jesus, after offering Himself as the ultimate sacrifice, sat down at the right hand of God. His work is complete. So how do we live in this rest? How do we stop striving and trust what Jesus has already done? Hebrews 6:13-20 gives us a beautiful picture. It speaks about how God made a promise to Abraham, swearing by Himself because there was no one greater. This promise, guaranteed by God's oath, is our anchor. It's an anchor for our souls, keeping us steady when life gets tough. And because God cannot lie, we have this assurance that holds firm, no matter what pressures we face. Jesus is our forerunner. He's gone ahead of us into the very presence of God, and He's paved the way for us to follow. We don't have to fear judgment or feel like we're not measuring up. Jesus has already done everything, and now we can rest in His finished work. Throughout Scripture, we find beautiful pictures of rest. One that comes to mind is Jesus, asleep in the boat during the storm. While the disciples were panicking, Jesus was at peace. His rest came from His trust in the Father. Psalm 23 gives us another image. He makes me lie down in green pastures. God doesn't just invite us to rest, He leads us to rest. In Ezekiel 34:25, God promises His people that they will sleep safely in the woods, resting without fear. And in the Holy of Holies, the high priest could never sit down because his work wasn't finished. But Christ, our high priest, finished the work of atonement and now sits at the right hand of the Father. So what does this mean for you today? It means you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Jesus offers you rest, real deep rest for your soul. He's already done the hard part. He's already made you righteous before God. All he asks is that you come to him, lay down your burdens, and walk with him. Friends, I want to encourage you today. Stop striving to prove yourself. Stop trying to earn what has already been given to you as a gift. Enter into the rest that Jesus offers. Trust in his love, and let your obedience flow from that trust. Thank you for joining me today. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who may need to hear it. And remember, we're all on this journey together, learning to rest in his promises. I'm your host, Samuel, and this has been another daily devotion brought to you by thepraiseporch.com. If you've enjoyed this time together, be sure to visit our website for more uplifting content. You can also find our music and more on YouTube. Just search for @thepraiseporch. Thanks for joining me today. May God's peace and love be with you always.